can authentic expression bring one absorption, or is it the other way around?
It's the other way around. And it's not just absorption. Absorption is a natural quality of the mind, of the consciousness, which does not project itself, or at the moment of absorption, the mind ceases projection or interaction with the external reality. And there are different depths and levels of absorption. So if it's just a beginner absorption, the focus is on one's own body. So one remains in the body, dwells in the body, fully conscious. So in other words, one possesses the body. Most of the people remain outside the body. And that's why they're possessed by other things or qualities rather than their pure essence, if I may say so. So they are projected, and they create unhealthy links and attachments to the projected reality, and in a way disperse themselves. And disperse themselves means their consciousness is dispersed throughout the projected reality. So when they're dispersed, they're somewhat outside the body because their focus is not their own form, but something else. And so when they want to understand themselves, to know themselves, the focus has to be within. And within means that they, first of all, are fully aware of their form. They remain in their form. So they have to withdraw from all their other business and bring their focus within. And within, you might wonder, where should I concentrate? On the throat, on the... once we're naturally absorbed, the focus is here always. But yet from here, you're kind of aware of your entire form. The form feels relaxed. Naturally, you don't need to make an effort once you're naturally absorbed. And your entire system is relaxed. Your pelvis is relaxed. Your abdominal area is relaxed. So that's kind of the basic absorption, the most natural. But then the deeper we realize ourselves, our subtle being, the more we get absorbed into that subtle being, which is our subtle form, our light form, light body, you may say, in other words. But these words and notions remain unknown for the majority of people, so they have to really deal with the current stage, the stage where they are, on the stage they're on, meaning just cultivating the natural being first, observing their attachments to the projected reality, observing their unhealthy, maybe sometimes, or irrelevant or unconscious reactions to the reality, which instantly takes them out of the body. So when someone is angered or irritated, their focus is no longer in the body because there's something out there that irritates them, so they focus on that. So that possesses them in a way. And that's why they feel unnatural in the body. They feel anxiety, they feel resentment of some sort. They can't, or some, not resentment is not the right word here, but irritation, anxiety, some sort of unsettled feeling inside. So this could come from somewhere else, but it doesn't matter where it comes from. There's something within them that attaches to it, that connects and makes it a reality for them. So nothing can attach to us if we, by the principle of resonance and by the principle of attraction, consciousness manifests only that which is within it. So we believe that we attract something, but we actually don't. We manifest only that which is there, and by frequency it attracts, or we notice it. In other words, we register it within the scope of our reality, and then we deal with it. So there are a lot of these aspects that draw our attention and in a way draw us out of our focus within, or out of our natural being, which is absorbed. Because we start living through the projection rather than actually living through the natural being. So we empower everything else outside of us. And so through this empowerment, we disperse our own vital energy. And because we do so, we start exhausting ourselves, draining ourselves, aging. Regardless of actions we perform, we exhaust ourselves, even if it's a spiritual action. If it doesn't come naturally out of our being, it is of the nature of draining. It doesn't fulfill. The fulfillment, the whole word fulfill, it's the fulfillment happens when you're absolutely within, when you fill in your own form with your own being. That's it. Your being is not elsewhere. Most of the people live elsewhere. They put their form to sleep, they feed their form, they're unconscious because their thoughts are with their business, with their friends, partners, or elsewhere. Their dreams, their projections, their wannabes, their hopes, or they are roaming in the past, constantly feeling victimized, in pain. And so these pains, these thoughts, these hopes, they possess our form. And when they possess our form too much, there is a so-called emotional and mental imbalance or sickness. So you may say, if you look at it from a spiritual or religious point of view, depending on your background, you may say it's a spiritual possession. But if you look at the spiritual kind of science point of view, or a deeper knowledge of what that is, you understand that spiritual possession is nothing but the state of being possessed by our suppressed emotions and traumatic responses which haven't been dealt with. So our fears possess us, our grudges, resentments, our inability to part with certain situations and events in our past, certain hurtful situations or relationships and attachments where we become blinded by our resentments, by our trauma. Very often, if you look at people with psychotic episodes, these people could be easily treated if there was a deep understanding of what they are going through. And if they could themselves realize with someone else's help the role of the trauma within, and the role they've kind of given, or the empowered trauma that took over them. So all of these ideas that start coming from somewhere, which could be called also demonic possessions or some other thing. The reality of these possessions is the dispersed, fragmented being which empowered the fragments of the self and allow these fragments to exist along with the conscious self. And in some moments, when there are certain triggers or certain moments where consciousness needs to purge these, there is a psychotic episode where trauma overpowers the conscious mind and the person starts acting upon the trauma, upon that suppressed anger, rage, where they perceive others as abusers, let's say if they experience certain abuse, or they start acting as an abuser because they've created that shadow within themselves, that shadow of an abuser, if they were abused, whether sexually or otherwise. And usually these beings with fragmented let's say dispersed personality are called schizophrenics, narcissists, and schizophrenic bipolar, but the root is one and the same, it's trauma. The root of the disease, if you may call it disease, it's a conscious imbalance. It's a result of untreated trauma, where with time, this trauma gained power over the conscious, because it hasn't been addressed, but it has been operating behind the scenes. So it has been gaining momentum. It has been suppressed and sort of fed from within. Many of these beings could be very talented, very spiritually even potent, and may even possess spiritual gifts, but they become very confused because sooner or later this trauma has to go. And the only way it has to go is to manifest itself in this projected reality, and it does manifest itself in a psychotic episode usually, or some kind of a drama, where one plunges into this scenario of trauma during that psychotic episode and is no longer their conscious self. So we don't understand these kind of situations, and so we don't usually know how to deal with them. So we numb these people, we drug them, or we don't deal with them. That could be the situation where that could be the moment where they could be brought back into themselves. And this sense of trust into someone could be restored, trust in life could be restored, and their consciousness could realize that this is not them, this is their trauma that have grown now to the unprecedented proportions and affects them more than, or it has more power than even their conscious being, conscious mind. And so during these moments, the only way is to remind these beings that they're of divine nature, that they are loved, that they're cared of, that it's not their fault, that's the trauma, so that somewhere they can consciously bring themselves back to the normal state, to the balanced state. Not everyone can do it. The one who brings the person already going into a psychotic episode, or who is in a psychotic episode, The only person who can bring has to have not only natural soothing and therapeutic sort of abilities or skills, but has to also have psycho-spiritual background, natural, you know, because you don't become true psychotherapists or healers by degree. The true psychotherapist has that aura to them, or supposed to have, has that presence that can soothe and calm the other being and can also bring them back to themselves, to their conscious selves, and make them realize that that projection is not them. That projection that overpowered them is not them. And so they will naturally, by themselves, come to their natural state. And through that return, they will empower themselves. They will realize their power of conscious being. They will understand and see trauma as if outside themselves. It's very rare that there are such psychotherapists. You have to be born, you don't need to have a degree. It's like you can't have a degree of being a genius. You have to be a genius yourself, right? And other people can see it. So the same thing, we don't have that capacity yet to offer this kind of, you know, services to other people because there are no people who understand this to the depth. There is spiritual and there is a psychological aspect to this. And there is psycho-spiritual and scientific aspect to it. So, but words don't matter here. What matters is the results. So if we go back to, if we are able to discover this natural being, through this natural being, we can start reflecting or seeing ourselves as if from the outside. So when we observe ourselves from the outside, we can start weeding out or weeding off all these traumas and our we start recognizing traumatic responses rather than natural responses, which are the responses from out of the natural being, out of contentment. So in a way, our entire life, even though we live normal lives, becomes so-called self-healing process. So we cannot speak about deep spiritual absorption or our subtle forms until we realize that at the moment our subtle forms are burdened or heavy with emotions, with unresolved traumas. And so the healing is the primary focus. Healing means returning oneself to the natural or naturally absorbed state, remaining in the body. When you remain in the body, you possess the body. When you allow some unhealthy emotions, repressed emotions, or other unhealthy states, mental, emotional states to possess you, you become veiled. You can't act consciously. So you don't even know what you do. And so your life becomes a havoc, a challenge. But you see, you kind of cannot track back the way you created. You've created this challenge or how you manifest this challenge. So already becoming aware of the way we manifest all these problems in our lives and issues is already the first step to healing, to balancing ourselves, to understanding the purpose of this so-called meditative absorption. Just meditation, as most of the people imagine, does not lead anywhere. Sitting with eyes closed or open does not do much. What is within? Are you content? Do you feel that? Do you feel the depth of this very moment in your body? Are you in the body? People imagine that meditative absorption is going elsewhere. before you go elsewhere, before you even go into the realm of the unknown, subtle, learn to remain in your body, learn to be within. Learn what this body is all about. Observe the body and its processes first. That's the first stage. If you are trying to jump elsewhere prematurely, you're going to be more confused, or you're going to call for havoc in your life, because everything goes step by step in life. We cannot jump over one step and go somewhere else and think that everything is going to be fine. It doesn't happen. Everything has to be established step by step. We have to be grounded within the self, oneself. We have to be settled within oneself. We have to understand the beauty and the value of our body, of our bodily existence. We have to understand how it functions. We have to understand how our subtle being, which is so far unrefined, shapes our physical being, how all our unrefined emotions, ideas, traumas shape our physical body, shape our so-called health or unhealthy being. And so once we've realized that, we spent enough time doing this so-called dirty job, we can naturally progress into subtler perceptions and subtler understanding of our being, and then we can naturally start going deeper and deeper within without forcing anything. So that's the purpose. So spirituality of these days is spirituality of healing first. Healing could be also called self-refinement. And to refine self, we need to awaken to the natural being, which is the absorbed being. And so the purpose of yoga, or Kundalini awakening, or in other words, conscious awakening, is to bring ourselves back to the body. But consciousness resides in the body here, so it will naturally return there and stay and observe the body. So the point of awakening is to bring yoga, that first yoga, which is absorption within, the perception of the natural being, through which we can finally start observing our traumas, our issues, ourselves and others from a different perspective, not from a dispersed perspective, from someone else's perspective or taking into account other people's opinions, but from our own kind of depth, from our own natural being, from equanimity. And so we can see things in a different light. And so when we do, the process of healing is naturally initiated. And so when we go along our lives and about our businesses, we start observing our traumatic, imbalanced impulses. We start to realize that these impulses have been ruling our existence. Now we have to take the power back to ourselves and consciously decide, do we want to act upon it or not? Or if it's a repressed emotion, we allow it to be expressed. If we couldn't speak, we allow it to be expressed, to be communicated. So communication is crucial in self-expression. Many people have issues, sexual issues, issues in relating to others simply because they can't express themselves verbally, freely. They are not, so they have to observe themselves. They have to, contemplate their backgrounds, their parents, and understand how that background affected them, why they face these sort of feelings, why do they feel suppressed when they're around other people, and come to the points in their childhood from where it started, if they can remember. Sometimes they can't remember. So that's why they need to continue contemplation until they finally realize. And through that memory, they remember the first moment when it started. And they disconnect from that story of that moment, and they just perceive it, what they felt at that moment. And they realize that that feeling is not them. And when they just observe it without feeding it with a story or with anything, that pain, that contraction, that blockage within their nervous system, within their being, starts dissolving. And it's not just once. It takes time to bring oneself back, to invoke these feelings, but to disconnect these feelings from any current circumstances or stories, not to connect them with the past stories, not to connect them or blame other people for that, just to be with that heaviness, pain, suppression until it transmutes. It may even start feeling like anger, rage, but that rage should be transmuted into tears. Then you can say that transmutation has been successful. So when people also talk about spiritual alchemy, they don't realize that at this point, we first of all need to transmute our traumas into natural being, which means we need to neutralize. It means we need to take that rage, that anger, that whatever negative, and through the tears, take it out, transmute it. So this transmutation usually naturally happens through the spiritual process of self-contemplation and being connected to the spiritual teaching, I would say, to the living spiritual teaching. So the presence, the living teaching, the presence of the teacher, and those people who do this work, they will be able to transmute it because it comes naturally. Consciousness itself knows its timing, and so it purges all these traumas and negative emotions, or even some kind of imbalanced emotions and traumatic responses one by one. So, and under proper guidance, it's possible. With time, one learns to recognize these moments, which usually take place during specific lunar points, like a new moon, before the new moon, full moon, or other cosmic events, which help us to reflect, project our traumas, reflect our issues back to ourselves, and eventually dissolve them within our consciousness. So the dissolution will again naturally result in a natural absorption. When something is purged out, when something is transmuted and released with tears, or through the liquid parts of our, what would I say, through the phlegm, the release of the phlegm, or tears, water, out, instantly you feel relief, your nervous system is relaxed, and you plunge into natural absorption. And the more you release, the more you realize that the natural absorption is your foundation, is that the fundamental being. Because at first it's like you perceive it as a spiritual tool. You go into absorption from time to time naturally or through some stimulation. Maybe you heard someone saying something or some spiritual music, or maybe singing of birds, or maybe you went to a forest and it helped you to absorb. But with time, through this inner work, you don't need any stimulations. You don't need anything to bring you back. You are just there all the time. It actually takes more effort to take you out of that absorption then, right? So then it means that you've established yourself. You've accomplished the first step. You've healed yourself to the degree where you can start digging deeper, because there could be subtler aspects to heal, but it's a little bit easier than the first step because you already understood the process. So this is the absorption itself is the alchemical tool. This is the way to understand spiritual alchemy on a basic level. Yeah. So, and naturally, that sort of purgation and dissolution of traumas and kind of natural return and being in that, staying in that foundation within, starts also rejuvenating you, starts balancing the energy flow within the body, because the subtle being has been refined, and so it starts permeating through the physical body. It starts healing the physical body, balancing the physical body, replenishing the physical body, because your focus is within the body. The subtle is not, the conscious being is within the body, so it nurtures the body. It's not elsewhere. It doesn't nurture your future hopes or past issues. It is now within your body. It nurtures your present. And so because it remains within, because your consciousness is within, it nurtures the physical body. So the physical body can easily replenish and heal itself. And so the physical form is to the face, starts blooming, glowing. You feel content, so other people are content around you as well. But your vibration could be higher, so it then may create a situation where your frequency is not matching the frequency of other beings, because their frequency is a frequency of trauma, because they haven't yet resolved those issues within. So your frequency might be comprehended or perceived in a contradictory manner depending on the person you're dealing with. Some beings may even be threatened by your presence. Because if you're content, or your presence can be healing and soothing, and they will recognize it, maybe even unconsciously be drawn to you. But you, despite whatever other people go through, you have to remain within yourself and nurture yourself, continue your work without trying to again disperse yourself on a new level or project or try to create something out of yourself, because you feel now a lot of creative potential, because you create your creativity, which is the power of consciousness, is not dispersed elsewhere, outwards. It's not constantly with a projected reality, but it nurtures within. So you may feel like you have a lot of creativity, and this is a trap. This creativity, if it's given too much focus, may again gradually take you out of yourself into the world, now on a new level. Now you may start being tempted by success, by recognition, by other things. So by maybe being overly attractive for other people. So if you don't have that inner wisdom which is rooted in humility, that spiritual intelligence which is rooted in humility, if you cannot understand the value of the higher being, you can be dispersed again. So on whichever level you are, there is always a risk to be again dispersed and drawn out into the projected world and lose oneself, maybe temporarily. Some people take detours, but it's a trap. On the other hand, you may enjoy anything by being rooted within. By being rooted within, it doesn't mean you can't enjoy. You can't have anything you want. But your focus, your primary focus remains within. That's the goal, to cultivate the being within. And this physical form is the fruit of that being. If you are doing something wrong, the physical form will suffer. It will manifest diseases, imbalances, in other words. It will manifest health issues. It will manifest something that will tell you, look, somewhere you remain unawares. You don't realize that maybe somewhere you're still unrefined. Because otherwise, these issues wouldn't be there. If you've accomplished your self-refinement on a certain level, and again, these levels is just a matter of, it's a figurative speech. It's not that there are levels, because everything is just smoothly flowing. But when you feel that on a certain level you are grounded, it has to manifest in your body. Your body will be more relaxed. You will feel more balanced. You will you will sleep well. You will be less tired or not tired at all. You won't need to eat that much, or you will naturally know what to eat and what not to eat, which again opposes this compulsive action or compulsive spiritual action approach, where you need to maintain a certain diet which is not natural to your current conscious state. So you're forcing something onto yourself. The diet has to reflect your conscious state, or be kind of, the diet is the kind of a reflection of your current conscious being, conscious state. So if you're forcing anything onto yourself, there won't be any good result. You will just be going up and down from one extreme to the other. You'll be stressing about this diet because it is not natural. So the path of true natural spirituality is when nothing is forced, when everything is the reflection of one's natural being. So you go on and do whatever you like to do, whatever you used to do, until you realize that it's not natural and it's no longer valid for you, and you just start again implementing natural changes, the changes that come out of you naturally rather than in a forced manner. So this is the only way to understand and to tell the path of natural spirituality and the path of action-driven, ambition-driven, unnatural spirituality, which again sprouts out from the inner trauma. Most of our spiritual ideas sprout out of our trauma, of our repressed emotions. We fall for unnatural spirituality, for ambitious spirituality, for commercial spirituality, because we approach it from our trauma. We are unrefined. We are incapable of recognizing the truth. So whoever offers us actions, some kind of tangible solutions, we fall for it, because we have no power to feel that impulse from within. We need to be led. And this is the problem. So because we need to be led, we fall for spirituality of the sheeple. So we follow those, or consumerism, yeah. We become consumers, which and our spirituality feeds of our consumerism. We are trying to find the solution outside of ourselves. And the truth is, there is no solution outside of ourselves. No matter what we hear or what we receive from the outside, if we cannot implement it, if it doesn't stick, if it doesn't find resonance and is not cultivated within oneself, from within, it remains theory, unreal, confusing, and misleading. So that's why true spirituality and true knowledge are, self-preserved. You cannot connect to that frequency as long as you don't cultivate or do not emit that frequency yourself. If your consciousness is dispersed and is just looking for quick solutions or hits or highs, then your spirituality will be of the same kind. To recognize true spiritual being outside of oneself, you need to recognize that within yourself first. If you have no clear realization, even to some degree or a sense, you will not be able to recognize true spirituality or tell true spirituality from the false one. It's impossible. And so you will need to go through all these fake gurus and charlatans and all kinds of clowns, spiritual clowns, who will give you one solution and then the other solution until and when you finally realize that I have to go within and I have to let go of all this rubbish, of all these unhealthy attachments that sprouted out from my traumas, from my feeling of being disempowered by the reality, from my false idea that someone else knows better than me. And then from that point on, you will start the process of actual search, because you will start seeing that all that which you've gone through was the reflection of your traumas, the reflection of your diseased mind. And these people were the results of that. Sometimes people may come to see something genuine, but they can't recognize it because their unrefined nature takes over at some point. So they get blinded by that, they can't recognize. Or they take some time to remove that veil and to come back to themselves, and so to realize what is what and who is who. And it's all fine. There's nothing wrong in it. Because true teaching, true spirituality does not depend on anyone. It's just a reflection of you. If you are authentic and true, or your spirituality will be false because it will reflect your falsehood. If you look for being petted, being acknowledged, for your narcissism to be validated, there's no healing in that. You will find that validation you're looking for, but you will not find the healing. And sooner or later, this will grow into a bigger issue. This will grow into some form of a spiritual possession, which you again might mistaken for, or mistake for some kind of a spiritual experience. Most of the people who foolishly believe that they have spiritually awakened simply have awakened because of their traumas, awakened to the trauma, not in a highly evolved spiritual sense, but they were pushed to awake to their traumas, to the subtle being that is traumatized. They've awakened to their possession by this trauma, but yet they don't want to admit it. they want to find someone who will validate this possession for being a spiritually advanced experience. It's not. Spiritually advanced experience is so neutral, so blissful, so wholesome, and non-interfering that it would mean nothing for the majority of people. As long as you're looking for something in terms of spirituality, you do not understand spirituality. You can't understand it because your trauma drives your search, drives your spiritual quest. And so even if you recognize your natural being, which is there at all times as natural absorption, right? You've recognized it, but you've taken it all wrong. Then that perception, that veil, keeps that state or that absorption as some sort of an achievement. Then there is no further movement until you let it go and realize that the absorption is not an achievement, it's your natural being. It's just the basic foundation through which you are to refine and to come to the depth of humility, to the depth of surrender. And surrender means deep trust in life unconditionally, without trying to grab and pull this life into your being. The more you're trying to do it, the unhealthier your body becomes. The more you age, the more you are anxious, even if other people think you're spiritual or you perform some spiritual actions. So it's very important to understand that the spiritual, or it's not really spiritual, this word is so much tarnished in this day and age. The meditative absorption is not an achievement. It's a precondition, but only when one is consciously mature and can humble down to the point of not making a big deal out of it, to the point of understanding that there's so much more, and that so much more to learn, so much more to realize, and that thought alone should humble one down and should bring them back to oneself within. Be like a humble apprentice. Cultivate self in silence without trying to look for recognition, and you will go much further spiritually, consciously, and in humility. It is a tipping point, definitely. It is the crucial point. Spiritual advancement means one is spiritually intelligent. Spiritual intelligence is impossible without humility. Those who are highly intelligent are extremely humble. They don't try to make anything out of themselves because they understand that before the existence, before creation and all its multitudes and dimensions, they are just a speck. They're just a particle. So, what can the projected reality give one? But just an experience that has to be discarded at one point. That's all.